Hello, welcome to Mutant Year 02 or Mutant Year 01. Now, this game has a lot of similarities with the first one, and I think people should kind of appreciate or understand at least that this game is not an XCOM clone, is not related to the more modern RPG turn-based tactical games, but instead it does its own thing, which for better or for worse, it has its own personality. So the game is supposed to be played a certain way, and I think people will have a lot of problems if they try to deviate from that. So you're supposed to visit all of the zones, you're supposed to get all of the loot from all of the zones, complete the quest, but you're also supposed to go back to the sedentary town, which is your hub for this area. And then you're supposed to buy, most importantly, healing items, some attachments, and that's about it. You cannot afford the guns, you cannot afford to buy nonsense. You just have to buy healing items and some attachments that you consider important or you like to play with them. And as the game progresses, you'll go, for example, to Happy Hills, then you can go back to Sedentary, get a quest, to go back to Happy Hills and kill a bounty target, and then maybe another quest to go to Gator Zone. You'll also unlock a new trader and stuff. So it's a back and forth, but it's not one of those back and forths you like. So, okay, the basic concept of combat is that you'll have to sneak around, eliminate one or two targets, sneak around more, eliminate one or two more targets, and then engage the main party on the map. The tutorials do a very good job of explaining to you. So that party over there with the inverted... What is that called again? I forgot my math. Anyway, that symbol can be a circle, can be a square, can be anything else. Over there, that means they belong to the same squad. So if you go over here, as you can see it's the same squad. So that means they'll all be alerted if you fight one of them and you're using loud guns. They don't explain this very well, what a loud gun is or what a silent gun is. This is a silent gun. It doesn't say anywhere. I think the developers messed up with it because they didn't explain too well. Silent ice gun. And the other ones don't have that definition. So in Mutant Year 0, you're supposed to do the same thing, but if you use the louder guns, you'd engage the whole party on the map. So that means, yeah, you can eliminate some of the enemies before combat starts, because combat gets exponentially harder the more enemies are in it. For example, having 2 more scouts in the fight could mean you lose 1 more party member or you use up more resources like healing items or grenades to finish the fight. So you have to do your best to sneak around the map, collect all of the loot, kill stragglers or enemies that move around, use battles to ambush them or move them away from a certain location, and also recharge your skills because the skills are on a global cooldown. So for example, this skill over here, let's say Hunter, is a passive one, right? But this one has a 4 turn cooldown. So that means 4 turns of combat. So that means you fight 2 turns in combat, then you leave combat and you do go to do another combat and the cooldown is still on 4. As it's shown over here. So sadly this means you'll have to do a lot of switching out from your skill. This is the most important thing. So as you can see, that has a cooldown. So if you select these skills, this one doesn't have a cooldown. So for some engagements, I know this sounds stupid, but hear me out. For some engagements, you'll have to use other skills in order to leave those other ones off cooldown. I do believe they... Well, actually, I'm not sure about this, because I didn't play it for that long to notice, but sometimes it's just better to equip the skills you want to play and don't worry about it, and try to preserve some enemies for the final round so you can kind of extend the fights, so your skills go off cooldown. In my opinion, it's not really fun, or it's not really worth it to change all of the skills all of the time, but that's what you have to do. So let's go to the equipment. So that's the basic rule of the game, and let's go to the equipment and the loadouts. At some point, you'll find a gun and you'll have something to put on it. Now, you have to treat these characters like very, very specialized characters. So for that, you need to pick the right skills, which will determine also their loadouts. So, how do I build this guy, Elvis? Well, simply put, you have to give him a good rifle and maybe the tactical disc, which can be super fun to use with him. And then give him the attachments that are needed for your specific task or combat. Since he's going to shoot a lot of people and also move them with his miasma powers, he'll just get range and damage, which is everything he needs. 80 damage is enough to kill the grabbers. 70 would be enough, but like I said, you want to kill the plant enemies as well. And he doesn't need a lot of crit stuff, and the range will benefit him because you want him to be out of harm's way as much as you can. As for the disc over here, well, to be honest, I have to remember to use the disc once or twice every combat for that energy gain. But sadly, you'll have to modify this a lot of times, so usually you will put this over here. Because unless you're fighting enemies that have 80 HP or 160 HP or something like that, it's a math game, that's the problem. It's supposed to be handled like a puzzle game, so you'll need 2 shots from your weapon to kill the scouts, right? So that means you can equip the kilowatt over here, so you can replenish some of your energy, because otherwise you'll have to use items, and those items are not as common as you think. You might be able to use your miasma powers once every 2 or 3 fights. If you use them more than that, you'll not have enough to use them for the harder fights, and that would be a big problem. As you can see, this only gives you back 80. And he has 100. So that's another basic concept of the game. So depending on the fight, you might want to swap out your things a little bit. You don't have to put something in every slot, because that's the problem. If you put something into the slot, that means you'll have to take it off at some point. So the one thing I really buy in the beginning is the magazine upgrade, which will help me have more hits for the guns. But since you'll be using this one with kilowatts, I guess this one is useless, right? So might as well not put anything in there. You also have a bit of a selection for weapons, but usually I use this gun. It says over here if you have an attachment, as you can see, scope or magazine icon. I use this gun a lot in the beginning to kill enemies that were behind cover, which is kind of like the only purpose it can be used. Now let's go over, I guess we can go over the equipment and then we'll go over the skills, because that will be a much more debated topic. Again, I'm just trying to make everything very short, so sometimes I'll miss information. At some point you'll get this gun over here for him, which is the anti-flasher. As you can see, it's like a normal rifle, except it has 10% crit chance versus humans. Other than that, it's more or less the same. So as you can see, you only have less critical damage, 20. The range and the ammo is the same. So yeah, you can give it something, but again, if you're not fighting humans, don't give this to anyone. On the empty slot over here, you can probably give him this one, because again, you have to think about the damage or the HP of the enemies. Who has 50 HP, who has 60? Will that be enough? So 50 damage is not going to be enough to kill the scouts with 130. So that means even if you put this one to do 10 more damage, that will not really influence the game that much, because you'll still need 3 shots. So that's kind of like the basic of the game. But yeah, this one is very good because it helps him crit. That's how it will remain. And also a shotgun. The shotguns are great in this game because they have a very good chance to hit. They can destroy cover, plus they can hit a lot of enemies. Plus, if they're bunched up together, they'll give you crit chance, and if you kill an enemy with a critical hit, you'll get your action point back, or you can even get 2 action points back. I have a video where he critical hits 3 enemies, so that means he got 3 action points back. Once 1 enemy and the other time 2 enemies, so that's 3 action points back. So definitely use him as his intended role. As for her, well, I guess she's the sniper, not much to say about here. So every time we go in and out of combat, she'll switch between the scopes. Versus humans, versus miasma. And over here it will always be the crit rounds, because you're more or depending on what you want to do. If you're going to fight outside of combat, you want this one for more critical damage. If you're fighting in combat, you might want to switch to this one. So again, you will have to mix and match them depending on if you ambush or do combat, if you fight against humans or other things. She's also the squishiest character, so enemies will go for her a lot of times. So I will give her this power core, so she can move away from danger and also reload when she needs to. And you might think, well, is it worth having this in combat? Well, not really. Like I said, you'll have to modify this a lot. But for now, this is a very important mod, because you'll find it for free and you can use it outside of combat to big efficiency. Because you'll get the damage up to 130, which means you can one-shot the frogs and some of the other stuff, the scouts. And some of the other snipers, sharpshooters you'll find in the game. Now, about their skills. Well, this is where miasma, not much to say. Okay, let's speak about the miasma. In the beginning, again, I'll do more videos for the game as I play more. The Decizer is an amazing tool for you because it will mean the strongest enemy in the field, like the people who have the guns or the frogs that have the guns, will do 50% less damage, which is great because that basically means they're almost harmless. They will need 4 or 5 turns to even knock you down. So that means, I mean, they will not even knock you down in 3 or 4 turns. Fire is great. You usually use fire because fire adds damage when you apply it and also at the beginning of their next round. So that means the enemy will take 60 damage before they can act, which is great. And on the empty slot, it's kind of debatable. I don't have anything slotted because I wanted to see if I find anything else. Remember, every chip you add will increase your energy cost. So currently it costs me 75 to use one Miasma power, the Storm. But if I put one more, that means I will not be able to use it when using one full recharge. So again, it's math. This will give me 80, that costs me 75. Math. But usually here you'd put the save your action points or gain 5 kilowatts when you use it. Again, it depends on what you want, mix and match. For now I didn't add anything, and if you get the one to steal plastics, you only get 10 plastics per stolen per hit. So that means if you use this skill 10 times, you'll get 100 plastics. So that means using this skill 10 times probably means you'll have to do 30 battles. So if you do the math, you'll see that you'll barely get any plastic out of it. So you might as well not even use it. And just use it as a utility item against very strong enemies. Now, the skills for this guy. Usually the stats are the weakest ones and you don't want to take this one. Usually this one over here on the top right means it's a very specialized build. So you probably don't want to take that one over there either. The best skills will be generally in this area, the lower part, because this is the damage stuff. And for him, I like to have him the Overwatch, the Sidewinder. The Sidewinder is an amazing fit for him because he'll be able to do critical shots when flanking, and he'll flank a lot. Also the Armor Eater, because this is the best way to remove armor with him. Keep in mind, he also has this tactical disc over here, so that means he can remove armor even when the enemy is behind cover, which is a bit like cheating, but you understand what I'm saying. Plus the corrosive shot is exactly like the fire. So 30 damage when you hit, 30 damage at the beginning of the next round. So that's 60 damage. This and this. Now the reflect shield is kind of useless because you don't want to get shot, and if you get shot you'll probably die in 2 or 3 hits depending on your difficulty. Usually I die in 2 hits on this difficulty. So this is a big no, this is a big yes, especially for enemies with armor, because that's your only way to remove armor in the beginning. This one is the most important one because it basically doubles your damage, which is super important against stronger enemies. And this one, I don't think it will be worth it because it's more or less the same thing, unless you're fighting enemies with a lot of armor. Overwatch is still useful no matter when you use it or how you use it. Just has so much utility, especially with his gun. His rifle does a lot of damage. Sidewinder, like I said, is very useful because in most of the fights you'll move and then shoot, and that's how the game is supposed to be played. You're never supposed to sit in the same spot for a long time. Since this is only useful for ambushes and he doesn't really ambush and he doesn't have a silent weapon, I don't have anything here. But if I get a silent weapon, I might change this one for my ambush tactics, because your ambush loadout will be different from the combat one. And Desperado. Well, I think this will be a very good skill once it's out, but I don't see it out benefiting the other ones, because at some point you'll want these ones for more Miasma powers. And you also want Temperance. Temperance on paper seems like it's a very bad idea, but think about this. When you're fighting and it's the last turn of the fight and there's only one enemy left, you can basically skip turns until you get max kilowatt energy back. But again, you can just run away from the enemy from one side of the map to the other side of the map to recover all of your energy, which is a bit like cheating, which is a very bad idea, and I hope the developers have a counter to this, but I don't think they have. So most of the times you can just run away from an enemy, and if the enemy doesn't hit you or hits you very light, you can basically trade it for energy. But at the same time, if you're going to get hit in combat, don't stay in combat too much. Just buy another battery item and don't waste your time. If you're going to get it two times in a combat, or even once, that means you have to buy a healing item, which means it will not be worth it. So for the easier fights, use Temperance to restore your energy. And the glove shock is actually an amazing feature of the game, because if you have a very strong enemy, you can basically pull out the gun from her, which is 130 damage or something like that. And if you use the glove shock ability from him, that means 90 more damage. So that means you'll be able to kill the enemies with 230 health. Yeah, you have to use a skill either with a crit to over crit, or with the rage filled up, or with the plasma shot. So yeah, this will be very important for your ambush build. So ambush build, and again, that's the most important thing. I don't think you'll need anything else from him, unless, like I said, later you want to recover your miasma powers faster. The robot. Well, the robot is a bit of a weird combination of things, because the best ones are the ones that do a lot of damage. So 100%, 1 million% you have to take the tackle skill, and another 1 million% is the Erauder skill, because it will allow you to get a critical hit on most enemies at some point. This is also very important for the shotgun, because if you use the shotgun in conjunction with this skill, you will have very pleasant results. Beautiful, beautiful. Now, this is also a bit of a conversation topic, which is the better one. Again, you don't really want to pick these ones, because usually he will have 2 core that will give him armor. So that means getting the other armor is a bit of a meh situation, because 3 points is a lot of points for that will take out of his damage output. So that means you'll have 3 armor, which is super useful, because he will not really get hurt too much by anything. But it's not, I don't feel like it's worth it to go all the way over here. So HP and Big Bro. Cover is kind of important, but at the same time, like I said, you're supposed to play the game in a very active way. So more or less, my build will be like this. So critical chance if you move before shooting, and then you also get the Erauder bonus, which will make him kind of a little critical hit machine. His weapons don't really allow for a lot of critical hits, but it's kind of okay. Now as for Hydraulic Grip, I'm not sure if it's worth it, because as you can see, you will have to get Acrobat before you get it, and it's 4 points, 6 points. I don't think it will be worth it. That's too much of an investment to be useful in most situations. You just need the raw damage sometimes. Counter Punch can be important, but there are not a lot of melee enemies, and most of the melee enemies will be killed in one hit, so this is not so important. 20% more damage can be super important, because, well, I guess you have to look at the other grenades. You'll see that, you'll think, oh, that's not a lot of damage, 20% is quite low. Yes, because that would mean what? 10 more damage, right? 60 damage, which will get you to under the 70 damage required for some enemies, right? Yeah, but you also have the super frag grenade, which will mean 15 damage, which will mean 90 damage per grenade if you get that one. So 90 damage will be enough to kill some of the enemies that have, I mean, some of the horde enemies, like the saplings, or even the frogmen, the melee frogmen, or the muggers. So you might need to get that one for some grenade kills that have a lot of enemies in the fight. And overall, over here, it's very important to know that this is kind of an utility thing. It's not really what you'd expect to be. So the cover can be important when you want to protect your allies from enemy fire, meaning they'll get shot anyway and he has armor. But I feel like this is not enough. The provoker might also be good for bosses and certain enemies, but overall, you can just choose the target your enemy will attack. For example, just put him closer to the enemy and the enemies will always attack him. So this is kind of a useless thing. So again, the game is centered around useless things, and try to kind of pull your attention away from the better builds. And this is a problem Mutant Year Zero also had. You didn't have a lot of builds. You just had the best way to deal with things, either in combat or in ambushes. So this will be a much better solution for combat. And then we might have another build for ambushes if we ever get to that part of the game where everyone has a silent gun. Okay, as for the sniper lady, well, this is not so much as a topic. As you can see, these ones are basically useless for her because of the way she's supposed to be used. This is also kind of useless for her as well, unless you really want to use this one in easier fights. So in easier fights, everyone will have a different build. Easy fights, you'll have Temperance. Easy fights, you might have Provoker to avoid damage or some other stuff, or to regain some of his skills. Easy fights, she will have the battle cry, which can be super helpful, but at the same time you don't want to waste combat turns because they'll work towards your other cooldowns. This is super good, this is super good, this is amazing. Now, if you're going to do an ambush build, you might as well go for the ambush build. So the ambush build means you have 20% critical chance from the ambush like this. Fire damage, because this is the tricky thing. You saw that her weapon deals 130 damage, right? On the crit. I hate I have to go out of the menu like this. Okay, so 130 damage for a crit, but you can also, if your chance to crit is 200%, that means the extra crit chance is to convert it into damage. So that means 75%, or I don't know, 100% more damage. It's not calculated like that. I don't know the exact formula. Just know that if you have more crit chance than 100, that will be translated into more weapon damage. So I guess it will be 180 or something like that. Plus the fire damage. So the fire skill means, okay, you deal 130 damage plus 30, 160. In the next turn, the enemy will get 30 more damage. So that's 190 damage. So if you kill the enemy by waiting the turn out and killing him with the fire the next turn, it actually counts as a stealth kill. I don't know why or how, but that's how it is. So again, shoot the enemy with fire, everyone ends their turn, and the next turn, if the enemy will die thanks to the fire, it will still count as a stealth kill. So super important to have damage over time effects with her, which more or less will make some of the other things very useful, like this one as well. This one works the same way, so if you can get to this point, you can basically kill any enemy before the combat starts, well, except bosses or elites. Active skill, this one is not so good, but as you can see, you don't really have anything else to take, so you might as well take this one. So at some point you'll gain all of the skills, so the perfect ambusher will be when she has Hunter and Nemesis. Nemesis is also super good. So if you are going to do no traditional combat, take this one out and take this one over here, otherwise like this. And the Sender is not really so useful. I don't like it because you rarely get a chance to go on the high ground against the enemy, and if you're on the high ground, you're also a prime target, so don't fall into the trap of moving your entire squad or your, not even her, on a high roof or somewhere on a high ground, because her okay, this is the problem. Her gun doesn't have a lot of range. As you can see, the range is 10 only, as opposed to him, which can have 16 with the attachment. So that will be a dirty trick the developers will play on you, trying to convince you need to go for the high ground. No. As for this one, the Crowd Pleaser, oh, it's an amazing ability. It does so much damage, so it's 70 to 100 damage 2 times. So that means you can deal up to 140 damage in an area of effect. But there's a but. This is great for crowds of enemies or bigger enemies or elites or bosses, but at the same time, remember, you will not be able to do a lot of damage to armored enemies unless you remove the armor first. You will not be able to attack enemies that are behind cover unless you can throw the turret behind enemies. So it has a lot of restrictions, so it's not really overpowered as it seems in the beginning, unless certain conditions are met. So my opinion would be for you to go for the critical stuff, this one over here, and for boss fights or for other fights, just pick these ones over here. Otherwise, for the easy fights, you can just relax with having Battle Cry. Sadly, you'll not really get a lot of chances to get Battle Cry, more or less, because most of the fights will be, she will have to perform a certain task or a certain role. Okay, so after all that talking, let's do some combat and I'll show you what I mean. So this is about the ambush and the mechanics that kind of go along with it. I wish I could pick this one as well, but not a chance. Also wish I could take that. Also wish I could take a lot of things, but remember, it's just good that your skills go off cooldown in the combat, so don't worry too much about it, otherwise you will have a lot of problems trying to min-max everything, because the game is based on that. And you'll have to change everything so much you'll get bored of it. So let's engage this squad. And you know an enemy will get, see this line over here, that means the enemy, if you kill this guy, that guy will notice. If we manage to kill him, that is. Okay, let's reload, because you also need to know that this sniper rifle works in a very weird way, in the sense that you need to be a certain range away from your target. So that means maximum range will give you maximum accuracy, while lowering the range where the enemy
I just think they're underpowered.
I was watching a stream. So lowering the range will lower the accuracy, while on this gun increasing, I mean going closer to the enemy will give you more accuracy. It's kind of a weird thing, you have to go for so many things. So critical chance, critical damage, ambush shots. Well, I guess we can take it like this, since it's more or less the same thing. And let's see if you can kill these enemies, but you have to do it a certain way. So when you kill an enemy, you get into that thing where you can shoot again, right? If it's a critical hit, right? Right. So this will explain more or less what you need to know about the game and the combat itself. So to do this little puzzle fight over here with two enemies, you just need to do something stupid like this. So take this guy out. As you can see, 65%. I wish you had a breakdown of all of these things, but sometimes that's harder to get. Oh, that was not a critical. How is that even possible? Anyway. Usually over 50% in this game means almost a guaranteed critical or a hit. But I guess sometimes you'll also get very unlucky. Sadly, scam saving is required in this game, otherwise most of the fighting and the challenges will feel impossible. Okay, let's hit this guy with a critical hit. Action point restored. And he didn't even notice us, because again, this is another thing I don't think I appreciate. Killing enemies from certain angles means you'll not be noticed. I like to shoot from bushes as well. Sadly, like I said, we don't have another silent weapon, so if you want to kill this guy, we'll have to improvise a little bit. I guess you can use his ability to tackle, but from what I saw, it doesn't work, as the other enemies will be alerted. Again, I don't want to test that theory out too much, so let's see what other tricks we have in our little book of tricks. And sadly, this is how the game will be played for a long time, especially on the fights where you have, let's say, 20 enemies and you have to kill at least 2 or 3 of them. As you can see, these skills are on cooldown, so I cannot use them. If I could have used them, that would have been perfect. I guess the developers have this thing where the shot will always do the same result regarding the critical hit. I guess we can try to change angles until we get a critical hit, but I doubt it. Maybe the developers really learn from their past experiences. That would be a very good thing. But I doubt it. I really doubt it. So as you can see, this is how the game is supposed to be played. Not the most fun or entertaining way, but it will help you do all of the things you need to do.
I want this.
Huh. Look what we found. So remember, no fights are optional, no fights are going to be easier later. You just have to do as many fights as possible as fast as possible to get all of the benefits and the bonuses. He already has that. I guess I can give him something over there, but like I said, he's not really one of the characters I use a lot. And I guess you can give him the magazine upgrade for that. Yeah, this will more or less work. So as you can see, you're building your party to be stronger in combat, but also outside of combat. So now if I was to go in combat, with those other frogmen. I'll have to change some of the things around, but not too much, I guess. And it will show that certain skills have a lower cooldown now. So we're ready for combat because we have the stun skill. I guess I can try to kill one more so I can prove the little point I was trying to make. See? We'll get noticed. That means we start combat. I guess I can play a little more so I can show you the exact way to handle these encounters. Otherwise you'll lose a lot of resources. And remember, if you buy healing items or grenades or energy replenishment, that means you have less money for attachments, for ships, and more importantly for guns. So normally over here you'd use the bottle. You just start the ambush, you use the bottle. There's not much to it, and then if you do it like this, as you can see, it will show you who it will attract. And he'll be put in another direction, and that's the easier way to do it. But don't waste your battles on these guys. Again, try to save up your resources for very hard fights that will come along the way, because there will be certain fights that, how should I put it? Certain fights will feel like they're very hard, certain fights will feel like they're impossible, and fights like this one feel like they're only for training purposes. So only to get experience so you can level up, so you get more HP and more skill points. So let me just go on the other side and I'll show you why this would be a bad idea, more or less. If you start over here, you probably don't want to start over here with the cover, because there's not really cover there. And probably the best location for you to start this fight would be somewhere over here, because you have the barrels close to you, and if the enemies try to flank you, you can destroy the barrels and some other things. See, this guy is kind of protected by those guys, and that Skull Crusher will be protected by other enemies. Anyway, this is the basics of the game, and I'll have to do this battle before I go to the next area. See you next time, bye bye.